taxes!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 141 of 91 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, Grace, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie and EJ.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Today we're going to be talking about season 8, episode 12 of 91, which is titled Disconnected. And we really do have a lot to talk about this episode. I know we always say that, but we really do.
Right?
And we're just going to dive right into it. We start out with Maddie going back to work, and she looks absolutely fabulous as she's doing it, by the way. I'm actually really liking her hair change.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Oh, I
kind of
love
digging it. Yeah, it's just she's just looking good. But she goes back, she gets the call of someone in distress, and the second this call happened, I knew something was off.
Mm-hmm.
I knew
I didn't
maybe
even
like a little bit into the call because I don't know, like the before part, I was like, okay, that's normal. But like then I got the feeling just maybe like 30 seconds into her taking the call, and I was like, okay, this is giving me a very off-putting vibe. I'm like, I think I know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounded the thing was I caught on like almost immediately that it was like the situation of her own, like
Right.
kidnapping, or like it was a
Mhm.
mirror. And I'm actually surprised. I don't always catch on to those things immediately. But I
Right.
was really maybe I just watch way too much murder mysteries or mysteries something. I get
Honestly,
this.
same.
But I was listening, I'm like, oh wait. I did not expect the rest of what happened though.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, backing up a little bit, yeah, she literally says in the call that her name is Maddie Hahn, and on the screen she keeps typing Maddie runs away,
Mm-hmm.
and then Maddie grabs her neck and starts like spurting blood from it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, we're re-traumatizing ourselves.
Yeah.
Got it.
Awkward.
Got it. The original time was not bad enough. We have to do it again.
Yep, that's usually how trauma works.
Right?
Yeah, that sounds about
Unfortunately.
right. And then she wakes up from the nightmare, and Chim is fast asleep. So then Chim is getting G up, and he thinks that Maddie's still sleeping. And she's not. She's in the kitchen, fully dressed,
Ready to go to work. Like,
ready to go to work. And Chim's even like, it's like you're ready to go back to work. And Maddie's like, well, I am. And Chim's like, today? And I was like, well, Sue said I could come back whenever I wanted. And Chim's like, I think she means that you could take longer if you wanted. Yeah, that's not ever gonna work like that.
oh, Maddie. Much like her brother is ready to come back to work, sometimes too early.
Yep.
It's a Buckley thing.
Runs in the family, apparently. I'm just gonna say she cannot say shit to him from this point on.
Right?
I'm not going back to
Yes.
work too fast. Even though in his past it's usually been a lot more about physical health than mental health, but
Right.
still, girl, self-reflection.
Yes. Self-reflection.
Also, I get it. And Chim, as you know, Maddie's telling Chim how, she's like, I said I would be more open about my mental health. And Chim's like, yeah. And Maddie says, I've been having night terrors. And Chim asks what they're about. And Maddie says work. And Chim's so confused. He's like, you're having night terrors about work, so you want to go back to work. Which I guess
mean-
is kind of like dragging the monster out from under the bed to confront it kind of deal.
I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I sort of get where she's coming from. And Maddie explains the night terrors, and she says how sorry he is. And Maddie says about how she thinks the dreams are trying to tell her something, and she's like that you nearly died 5 weeks ago. I'm like, only 5 weeks?
I mean,
I
I will
know.
give them credit for putting a timeline in there because, sometimes they don't do that and you're like, well, how long has it been?
See, my opinion is that 911 should have no timelines whatsoever. They should just exist ambiguously in the space of existence, because every timeline that they put on something absolutely contradicts something else that has ever happened.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, that is true.
So in this scenario, I think it's a reasonable timeline, even though I was surprised it was only 5 weeks. But I'm just generally, I don't think they should put timelines on things because they just wound up messing themselves up. They don't know. They should have someone whose job is specifically engineered towards keeping track of the timeline of the show, because clearly someone else is not doing it.
Yeah.
No, they always mess
good
something up.
call.
Timelines sometimes don't timeline in shows, like, and it's funny because people try to figure it out and they're like, well, this happened, but like, and it's like, okay, it never works.
The good like a good point about this is how old is fucking Eddie?
The Chris was
We
born
don't
in
know.
here.
He was born in 2011, and
I
from what we've gathered,
think
he was about 19 when that happened.
Well, and Eddie said Chris was 14 in the episode.
Yeah, so he's about 33 if that timeline tracks. That's the same
yeah.
age as Buck, and we've been told early on that he was older than Buck. So yeah, again, Eddie's age is a great example of all of this.
Yes, it is.
How old is? I think the only person we've gotten like an actual age on for sure, like updated is Buck.
Yeah, okay. From what I'm looking up, Buck would be like a year younger than Eddie, but like they definitely made it seem like they had at least a 2 to 3 year age gap.
Yeah, I don't know. All that aside, we'll get to Eddie later.
Yeah,
Not
right.
his age, unfortunately, but we will get to him. Moving back to the scene though. But so Chim makes a comment about nearly 5 weeks. And Maddie says no, it's been 5 weeks since she has got to do her job. Maddie thinks that Brayburn is still calling the shots, and the faster she can get rid of her, the better. And Maddie asks Chim if he thinks she's lost her mind, and Chim, the amazing husband he is, says how she's brave and he supports her. I love Chim. I'm just saying. He's great. So now, speaking of Eddie, we're in Texas. So he goes to a fire station in Texas and he's trying to get a job. And of course, Bobby gave Eddie a glowing review. And the captain asks Eddie how he's settling into Texas. And Eddie says how, he grew up here. He's currently got a fixer-upper, which is a nice way of saying the house is just falling apart.
Yeah, kind
of makes sense though. He didn't have tons of funds.
right.
And he bought a house kind of quick.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, no matter where the place that Buck said this from was coming from, he was right to be like, I'm not so sure about this in one of the previous episodes.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for people, especially younger guys who have that. But his goal is to, hopefully maybe have some more of a relationship with the son. And how can you do that in a house that's like half finished or needing a lot of work?
Yeah, it's falling apart.
The doors are falling off the cabinets. Leaks are happening from the ceiling.
It's just like,
the nice thing is that at least when he's fixing up the house, he can also put in the work to make it like disability friendly for Chris if Chris moves back in with him.
That is true.
So there is that he can specifically aim to put in accommodations if needed.
right.
But he's got a long way to go before that's his main problem.
I mean, you could get a house that's already like in good condition and still make accommodations.
Yeah.
It's just it's like kind of one of those things where we know Eddie's not going to be staying there, and he took on such a large project to have to fix up this house with like very little money.
Right.
I don't think he really thought through, like, yeah, it was like what he could afford, but I'm just like, Eddie, why would you buy a house in a state you might not stay in?
Yeah.
Because at the time he's thinking that he's gonna stay there. And honestly, I have no idea what Eddie's whole storyline is looking like at all in any of this. But I think they are definitely backing themselves into a bit of a corner with him having spent all his funds on a house. Truly, if he wants to get out of this, as long as he's got homeowners insurance, he just needs it to burn down, and he's going to get the payout and move back to LA.
Former firefighter's house burns down because it's in a bad shape. That's a great headline.
They just need a natural disaster to like wipe it out or something, They need something.
Yeah. Oh, but in this scene, it was really cool to hear like Bobby's response to about Eddie, and that Eddie's always got a place at the 118, which is awesome. Because I think there's some fears in that, like you're moving out of the state, but you're like really don't know what to expect, and like if he gets there and Chris is like totally not interested in having him anywhere there, like what is he gonna do? He's gonna go back to LA possibly. and so he kind of already has a job there.
Yeah.
So.
And it does work in his favor that one of the reasons he got hired at the 118 is because of his exemplary record in the academy. And he's got a great record as a firefighter anyway. So he's got good stuff backing him up. And Eddie's interview ends with the guy saying he'll be in touch as the bells go off.
Didn't he question Eddie about like him having a partner or anything like that? And does he talk about Buck or something? Or no? I don't know.
No, that did not happen.
That didn't happen. No.
Okay. No, I'm mixing up other things. I'm trying to remember what actually happened in the show versus like people like, oh, well, did he say this or whatever? But it was something about the last time he hired a guy that was out of the area.
The guy
other got a job somewhere else, and he took off like after a year or something like that. Oh yeah, because he was asking Eddie for Eddie's commitment to the fire department. That's right.
Eddie was questioned about that. So especially, I think Bobby's review did like strike an alarm bell in this fire captain because of that. He was like, "Oh, it sounds like you would leave us in a heartbeat to go back to the 118 kind of deal in California."
I mean, yeah,
which may be. Who knows what this fucking show's doing?
I know. I'm so confused right now.
I've got theories, but now is not necessarily the time. Right. So we go back to Maddie, and she's going back to work for real, and she's holding her headset, just looking at it, and Josh is saying, a little bit the same. I love Josh. I love seeing him here. And Maddie, she's like, I know that. Josh goes on to say that if his last call was from a serial killer, he'd be nervous to answer the phone again, too.
And I'm like, Josh, love you, babe, but like, maybe not the time.
Right?
Honestly, he's confronting things that she's certainly not. So
yeah, I mean, maybe not the
best
thing to say, but you know what,
Frank, we need you.
I know. I had made like some video or something where I was like, if only our favorite neighborhood dispatcher therapist could come back.
Right. Yeah, where has he been?
I'm sure he needs something to do.
He is on paid leave, taking a break from the 118's trauma.
He's
he
on
can't deal with it
anymore. He needs a vacation. He needs like therapy to deal with giving the 118 therapy.
Which, you know what? Most therapists have therapists of their own. So, you know what?
Right.
I'm just saying that he has traumatized a long line of therapists from telling his and then his therapist telling their therapist. And then, yeah. So anyway, the 118 has wounded the entire psychology career.
Job security, I guess.
Yeah.
So Maddie goes on to say that it's just first day back jitters. Maddie takes a call for an apartment fire at a high rise, and as she's talking, her voice is cracking. I'm just gonna say, finally, on the firefighter show, we have a fire. It's been a while.
It has
honestly, yeah, it has been a while. I haven't really thought about it, but yes, it has been a long ass time. I feel like we get more accidents on like
we
here. Where on Lone Star we did get a little bit more fire. That's just my opinion.
Statistically, paramedics, like there are much more medical emergencies than there are like purely firefighter emergencies. Yeah. So I'm not necessarily surprised. The firefighters, of course, like gonna accompany paramedics anyway. We see that all the time with accidents and stuff. But yeah, so I'm not necessarily surprised, but I did see a post that was talking like, oh, finally on the firefighter show we have fire. I was like, wait, actually, when was the last time we had a fire? That wasn't
just
like
have
in a montage.
Fire at the animal rescue center.
Oh yeah, that is true.
That's fair.
But you're right. I mean, the bulk of firefighter, calls are usually medical or like non-fire related. They're more like rescues than it is an actual fire.
Yeah. So I think before the animal like shelter had out a fire, I feel like it had also been a while. I don't know, it just always feels like a surprise whenever we have it. So the 118 of course is responding, and Buck and Ravi go inside while Hannah and Tim triage outside. I'd like to take 1 second to just recognize Bobby's growth. He did not call Ravi Eddie.
Yes.
He has improved.
He has improved. Yes.
I just noticed that because he was like, Buck and Ravi. I'm like, oh my gosh, he didn't stumble over Ravi's
name
this time.
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't play that more than one episode. That would be rather annoying.
A little bit, yeah. But it was still funny to recognize, like,
oh yeah, for passing. Sure.
Like, oh my gosh, growth. Bobby's asking if the kid is the guy the one that we're following from the call, um, can see fire trucks outside. So Maddie asks, and the kid does see three of them out there. Maddie asks him to try and wave a blanket out the window, and she tells Bobby, and he says he'll look for it. The little boy, whose name is Chance, is like, oh, now what? And this is when Maddie starts wheezing and can't talk because her voice has been steadily fading the entire call.
Right.
And Josh ends up having to take over the call. And so the blanket does get waved out the window. They see it. So Bobby tells them to go to the 10th floor at the middle unit. Maddie is wheezing still. Everything seems fuzzy because she's panicking. Buck gets the kid. They get the dad too. And Sue's asking Maddie what's wrong. And they think it's chest pains because she's got her hand to her chest, but she's communicating that she cannot speak. You've got like the tiniest hint of a voice. But it's barely anything. So yay, that's not great.
Right.
I know. I wasn't like, I don't know. Like, I liked what they did with that, but like when I saw in the promo, I was like, I don't really know what's happening. And then I saw something else, and I'm like, I wonder if it's like a panic attack. But then it ended up being this, and I was like, oh,
Yeah. I already got spoilers on what it was before I watched the episode, so I wasn't necessarily surprised by any of it. But it was definitely very interesting to watch in real time. And of course, the spoilers hadn't quite told me how bad, like, how much she was suffering with coping with it before the whole voice thing happened. So yeah, it was something else. So back to Texas, Eddie is telling his parents and Chris about the firehouse. Eddie's saying how the firehouse is cool, even though the guy has dead stuffed animals in his office.
It's like,
And
they're
Chris, of
like
course, finds it.
welcome to
dead
Texas.
snakes. I was like, they totally went Texas on that.
A stuffed rattlesnake, a stuffed deer head. Yeah,
it was like, wow,
That,
they went all out on
yeah,
that one.
yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
definitely a change from like what we were used to with the 126 too.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that honestly came mostly from the fact that Owen was from New York, so he's not gonna have like stuff like that in his office.
Yeah.
If that's your thing, cool. I don't necessarily vibe with that kind of stuff, but like,
I do not.
you know what?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like the inside of this firehouse looked a lot more like firehouses like around my area, and I feel like traditional older style. The 118 and the 126 were both like redone in a very modern style. So I can imagine the 126 probably looked slightly closer to this before Owen went in there. But obviously, he's the, green smoothies wellness retreat guy from New York. So he's going in and redoing things. And 118's in California. That's all super modern anyway, at least in the LA area. So not surprised. But it was definitely interesting to see. And of course, Chris thinks it's cool because he's 14 years old. And that sounds about right.
Right.
Eddie's dad comes in with a box from Amazon Prime. He's just reading out the box, which I think is so funny.
Yeah,
Because
I know.
any of us, if we get a box from Amazon, we know who it is first, second glancing at it.
Right. Totally ad placement there.
I know. I just, I do, like, I don't even mind the ad placements. I find them funny. I'm just like, yep, ad placement. We love it.
And Eddie opens it and it's a PS5, which is also super cool. And Chris is of course excited about it. And Eddie poses the question of, do we keep it here or at my place? And Eddie's mom's asking all these questions about the house, so they decide to keep it here, which is fair enough. The ceiling might fall on it, honestly. But you can tell that Eddie's kind of feeling a little bit discouraged, and he goes to do the dishes. His dad follows him and tells him how he doesn't have to buy Chris's love. And Eddie knows that, and he just wishes Chris was glad he was here. Eddie's dad tells him that Chris was bragging to his friends the other day, saying, my dad, the firefighter. And Eddie thanks him for telling him that.
Yeah, and I noticed in this scene, you could definitely tell Helena was in a mood. I mean, like she usually is, but she just...
I think she's always
talking down about, situations, and I'm like, lady, it's his son, not yours.
Yeah, I know a lot of people commented on her just on like things like that. And I'm just like, yeah, she was driving me nuts. I was just like, I don't like I don't like you. I don't know. I just I know a lot of people were kind of fed up, and like it's just like I don't know. She was acting like Chris is her kid, and I'm just like, are you trying to make up for some things or what's What's the deal?
Helena Diaz has always been like the fandom's public enemy number one. And I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong. I've never liked her
Yeah.
myself. And I also feel like she is, I will say, like, not saying that the like hatred towards her is wrong because I absolutely endorse it, but I also feel like she represents a lot of people's own issues with their parents. So people see her and they're like, bitch, shut up.
Right.
Which fair enough. Ramon has grown himself in recent times, but we have not seen that growth with Helena. So she can just
Right.
fuck off. And she's always been weirdly overbearing and over assuming with her own relationship with Chris and putting
Yeah.
Eddie down for his choices or where he lives or anything like that.
Right.
So yeah, no, lady, shut up.
Yeah, I agree.
So now we're back in LA. We're with Jim and Maddie at the doctor, and they find nothing should be affecting her voice physically. And so the doctor thinks it isn't related to her injury. Maddie is wondering about her thyroid because she suffered from postpartum thyroiditis after their daughter. And Jim says she's pregnant and asks if hormones can affect your voice. And the doctor says they can, but Maddie's blood panel came back normal. And the
Right.
doctor seems to think that this is happening because of loss of voice from emotional or physical trauma. And the doctor says it's a trauma response and most likely triggered by something specific. So Chim explains that she's a dispatcher, and the doctor says that shouldn't really impact it. And he doesn't think it sounds traumatic given her line of work. But then Chim explains about the last call Maddie took. The person on the other end kidnapped her and cut her throat. And the doctor's like, well, that would do. That would qualify.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And Maddie's like, she took my voice. And Jim says, no, she didn't. The doctor says they should try some vocal exercises, and Maddie goes on voice rest. He also recommends therapy and speech therapy, of course. And I'm like, girl, the fact you're not already in therapy, go back to Frank, okay?
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know. I feel like, though, I think Maddie was more or less like, she was only seeing him specifically for what happened that one time. So I'm like, she's probably not going to choose to willingly go back.
Yeah.
And honestly, if she might choose to go to another therapist outside of all that, that's fine. Seriously,
Right.
Frank is just the go-to. But I think she's in a little bit, and she's done this before, like after some injury to herself or otherwise. She is determined to just move past it and not focus on the trauma surrounding it. And so we've seen it before. It's not necessarily unusual. So I think she's definitely doing this, but like, hey man, you're
Right.
really traumatized from this. You should go to therapy. I think she's probably gonna realize that.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not dunking on her. That's a natural response, and we've seen it from her before.
Sure.
But yeah, just can't quite keep going on like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this can resolve in a few weeks or a few years or never. So that's scary.
Very concerning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can't give a timeline for things. You can do that with physical things because we have a lot more study on how the body heals, but the mind, you can't really see what's happening there.
Yeah.
So it's not really something you can give an estimate on. But it's definitely scary for her because, she's got her job, she's got her daughter, she's got a son on the way, she's got an entire life that her voice, as she says, I don't know if she says in this scene or a later scene, but she literally says her voice is everything. But so yeah, understandably really scary. So back to Texas. Eddie is working on the house. Captain from 270 calls, and of course Eddie calls Buck and tells him about it. So basically Eddie did not get the job only because they have a hiring freeze and things froze up after they talked. It might be a year until Eddie can get a job he actually wants. And Eddie used all his money on the house. He cannot go 6 weeks, much less 6 months without a check. So this is pretty bad. Yeah. Because also, obviously, him putting all the money down in the house does not mean he outright owns the house. He absolutely has a mortgage he has to pay and other bills like electric and all that. Like, yeah, he can't go a year without a job.
No. I feel bad for him. I feel bad that they didn't, the captain didn't hint that there might be some issues, but also you never know when a hiring freeze happens, and when Eddie moved or was planning on moving, like he first got the idea to move, I think he should have thought a little further ahead instead of waiting until he got there.
Right.
So had he done that, he could have walked into the job like when he got there, but Also, he kind of did it abruptly. It wasn't like, 6-year plan. Like it was over a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he absolutely moved too fast, and so yeah, that kind of puts because he might have been able to have like if he had applied ahead of time, he might have been able to slide in before that hiring freeze. So yeah, but obviously he was kind of following one single line of thought of just getting Texas to be with Chris, and
Yeah.
that I understand, but kind of puts him in a rough position. Um,
Now he has to figure out
and
what he's gonna do between now and getting a job, or the job he wants.
exactly. And Eddie says something like, "Do you think Cap still has a spot for me?" And Buck's like, "You're thinking of coming back?" And he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not taking your house, but I might need your couch."
Oh my god. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
and
boy.
Buck asks about Chris, and Eddie says he needs to support him and says how at least when he was LA, he could send money and be a firefighter. And Eddie says that's the only thing he's proud of Eddie for. And Buck says, that's not true. And Eddie can't bear to see his face when he finds out that Eddie failed. And Buck reminds him that he didn't fail. And Eddie tells Buck that he didn't go out there to be an Uber driver. And Buck's like, or a firefighter. You went out there to be Christopher's dad. You can't come back.
Go Buck. As much as I would love to see Eddie go back to LA, Buck is totally right. Like he went there to be Chris's dad, like first and foremost.
Yeah. And Buck's being a good friend. I'm just saying he is pulling through on being supportive and letting Eddie rant to him, and it's fun to see their friendship, even over FaceTime.
Yeah. Which everybody was concerned, like, oh my god, are we gonna get that? And like we had confirmation, like, oh yeah, we're gonna get them FaceTiming. Like their friendship is still gonna continue, which is awesome.
Yeah. And Eddie wonders what he's gonna do, but Buck has to go because the bell sounds.
Right. And I love that Buck was in the kitchen cooking at the station.
That was so I love this. Like the progression of like just him, like that's his thing now, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and Bobby's not the only cook at the 118 anymore, which is awesome.
He took the reins from his father.
The reins from his father. I love how they didn't really drop like any storylines in this. Like they kept hints of different stuff happening throughout, and I love it. So then we go to Zoom court.
Okay, this scene gave me a jump scare because I didn't realize it was Zoom court right away. I thought it was like something interrupting the show. I go, don't tell me this is like some breaking news thing. I said, I do not, you better not be interrupting 911. Yeah. And then it was like, oh good, it's just Zoom court. Never mind.
Yeah, my roommate's like, is this the same show? And I was like, yes, it's the same
show. I wasn't sure for a second because I was like, wait, what's happening?
The American fear of what the fuck is happening now?
Right?
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, understandable. I mainly just got COVID era jump scare because that's what this reminded me of. So I was like, wait, what? Yeah. So it's Zoom court. This guy's being charged driving without a license. And this is so funny because I think this is reflecting an actual thing that happened, like an actual call that happened. So when he gets on, his camera's off and they tell him to turn it on and he delays doing so. But when he's driving.
Yeah. I predicted that because there was this one Zoom court scene that went viral maybe like a year or two ago, and it was the same scenario. So I was like, man, this sounds so familiar.
Right.
Well, like his license was revoked or something like that, and he was driving.
Yeah, he had suspended license, and it was funny because when they turned it on, I was like, okay, because it also reminded me of one of the viral kind of court scenes where this woman was like trying to testify against like her ex or something, and like the judge caught on like they were in the same house.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be like she was getting a restraining order. There was something else like happening, and like she's like, "Are you guys in the same house?" And like yeah. So then they're like, yeah. But I'm like, and this is why they tell you like don't have backgrounds. Like if you're gonna be on Zoom, like you're gonna be on, like don't be in your car.
Yeah. Just sit with your back to a blank wall and don't like. So this leads to the call because the woman says, "No, the judge says I'm revoking your bail. You're going to be brought in. Please turn yourself over to the county court or the jail by X and X tonight." And then the guy freaking crashes, and he crashes his car, and now it's hanging off a parking structure because of course it is. And so naturally they have the whole thing of the 118 coming, rescuing the guy. It is really funny because this is the actor that played Chuck in Supernatural.
Yeah. Or yeah, God.
God. Yeah. Played God in Supernatural. So I'm like, God, you gotta lay off that pizza, man. Like, what are you
Right?
doing?
Yeah. And I think somebody had mentioned it. It's like it's so funny because the guy who held Buck and Eddie hostage in or what is the cell block 118 played Lucifer also in Supernatural. So I love the like little supernatural elements of these shows.
Oh,
The
that's so
actors in it.
ironically funny.
Which is so funny because I never put together that the actor was the same person before you mentioned that. I was like, wait a second, it is. That's just really funny. But yeah, this is mainly funny because they also have the pizza element, and that just reminds me of the other pizza scene from Supernatural.
Yeah.
Which is, if you know, you know. We're not going to talk about
Right.
it here. But anyway, the guy is basically going on about how, or you can just leave me, and Buck's like, it doesn't work like that. And the guy doesn't want to go out the passenger door, so they have to get him out through the trunk. And then the dude goes down there and he's talking to Athena, and he's like, I'm Ozzy. And Athena's like, can I help you? He's like, yeah, that's my car up there. And so he turns himself in, essentially.
Yeah, which
So
was
Athena knows
good
who
on
he
his
is.
part that he actually did that.
Yeah, because he's essentially been running away from everything, as he says. He even is like, I ran away from the court, I ran away from my marriage. Like,
Yeah.
and then she handcuffs him, but she can't get into her car because this dude's car falls on her cruiser.
That was so funny. Like Athena has the worst luck with something. Like I just like last week in
Yeah.
like the crossover with the cruise ship, this week with this. Like like Athena,
Right.
you had the worst luck.
Also,
Doesn't
I
she
will
say
just say, girl, why was your car there?
I know
Why
a
didn't
lot
you
of
park the
people
other?
a lot of people are like I get parking close, but why did you park right there? Because it was basically right under where his car was. I would think she would have maybe picked a different spot that was still in the close vicinity, but not right there. That was
I
just
think
Mhm.
it would have been really funny if she had parked nearby, but not like directly under. But the car like bounced when it hit the ground, then still landed on her cruiser. Because that'd be even worse luck. In
What?
this case, it's just Athena. Why did you do that?
And I think the funniest line from her was, "I sure hope you have insurance." I'm like, dude,
I
he's
mean,
driving on a suspended license. Do you really think he has insurance?
probably not.
Probably not. And then the whole way in 18 is just peering down from the parking structure, like, what happened?
Yeah, Buck's got a piece of pizza in his hand.
Of course he does.
Me too, honestly. Like at that point, it's
I
like, okay,
mean,
reward. Because he also said something about loving like the pizza place this guy's delivering for. So
I
I'm like, Buck,
know.
I love your priorities. I love it. I appreciate it. Me too. Aye. So then we have Jim and Maddie doing the voice exercises, and this is, oh god, this just pulls on the heartstrings because she's so worried about getting her voice back and not having control and feeling like Brayburn still has all this power over her. And Jim brings up doing exposure therapy again, but Maddie's understandably having a hard time with all this. And honestly, she brings up such a good question because this like, oh god, that hits right in therapy feels of how do you kill a monster that's already dead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, ow, I was not prepared to be personally attacked today. Thank you very much.
Right.
So yeah, that was quite a line, but it's true. So back to Texas. Eddie trades in his truck. The truck that has been with him since season 3, that he made questionable decisions about purchasing at the time, but clearly has enjoyed since then. He gets a smaller car to Uber, and he gets some interesting passengers. And this is one reason I decided very early on, no fucking way am I ever doing Uber.
I could never.
No.
Like I give mad respect to people that do that. Like especially a lot of people do that like as a side job to make extra money. I could never because I would not want people like getting in my car because a lot of people like some people are drunk and they vomit and then like people
Mhm.
just like oh this and I have like a newer car so I'm just like no and like I don't want to be in that close proximity with people and
Right.
like people like don't tip a lot of people don't well I don't want to say a lot of people but some people don't
Yeah.
tip and
Yeah.
like you're not even getting like compensated for like how much you drive or anything like that. That's coming out of your own top get. So it's like,
Right.
You have to do
not
it
worth it.
religiously to make an earning, and
Yeah.
thanks, but I have a life other than that.
Yeah.
I know.
We're
There,
not, yeah.
yeah, there's this Instacart shopper that shops at my store. And she apparently makes like a ridiculous amount of money, but she's like there all day.
Yeah.
Like it's
Like
crazy.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
and I'm glad, we had some definitely interesting characters, and Eddie I think I've heard more from Eddie in his like speaking in that like clip montage than we did in most episodes recently. Just he's not a talker, and he just could not shut up the first few
Yeah.
passengers. I'm like, dude, and I'm so glad that girl was giving him some pointers because he needed them badly.
yeah. I personally, I very rarely, I've taken a lot of Ubers in my time because that's how I commuted to work before I got my license. And so essentially that's how I was getting to work for the first 2 years I worked at my job. I'm now in my third year. I can finally drive myself.
Right.
But so many tried to hold on some sort of conversation. And when you're doing Ubers all the time, I don't want to talk to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're perfectly sweet. But no, and I also have horror stories from Uber as well and Lyft. A couple too many times I thought I was fully gonna die. But yeah, it's been a yeah, I do love that eventually he got a girl that was giving him advice, being like, that's how I got through undergrad. I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you for advising him to shut the fuck up.
We love it.
Yeah. So the thing is that he didn't tell Chris what he was doing. Chris thinks he's doing firefighter work. The thing that doesn't work is when Eddie picks up Christopher, his friend, and Chris. Oops. Yeah. Eddie, of course, calls Buck about it, and Eddie says how they pretend they didn't know each other. And then he's like, he caught me in another lie. I'm like, Eddie, you gotta stop doing that. Like, I get why you did it, but you gotta stop doing
Right.
it.
He just
And
definitely
Buck,
for sure.
and Buck tells Eddie to text him. He's never too busy to text. He's never too busy to text. And he's like, my worst nightmare came true again. And Buck's like, no, no, it's like my worst nightmare again. And Buck's like, no, your worst nightmare already happened. Chris left. This time, at least, Eddie has a chance to face the consequences. Because at least out of all the things, it's at least better than the other lie.
Yeah, it's a lot better than the other one. Because at least,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, this is more understandable. Like, where the other one, that was not understandable at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one he can at least be, hey, I was ashamed. I didn't want to let you down. Um, like those are understandable things, and Chris is old enough to understand that. The other thing was just a whole fucking mess. So Eddie texts him, asks if they can talk, and says how he saw he lied. Back to LA, Maddie is doing her exercises when she hears knocking at the door, and it's Athena, and we just like that she came to see Maddie. I love watching them
I
together.
know, I love
It's
this.
awesome.
And Athena's being like, is the little guy kicking yet? Maddie tells Athena that she can't stop talking, like thinking about Brayburn either, and saying how she missed all the signs. And then Athena says, baby, Amber Brayburn took plenty, but she didn't take your gift. Fear did. Fear of all things that could go wrong next time you pick up the phone. And Maddie types out that she's not scared, and Athena says, good for you. I am.
The seed, I
Love
loved
that.
the seed.
Yeah. It was so good.
Fucking Athena, I love you. And Maddie kind of looks at her like, you scared? And Athena says, I am. I'm scared every day on the job. Every time she takes down a door, she thinks about all the time it went south for her. Every car she pulls over, she thinks about all the drivers that meet her with a gun. But then she thinks about all the people who still need her protection. And she makes
Right.
herself more afraid for them than she is for herself. Athena is tussled with a ghost too. She can't undo what the monster did, but that fear, she can work with it. And Maddie's like, I'm not you. And Athena's like, girl, nobody is. Which, preach.
Right.
I know. I love the scene. They were such good, like Maddie had really good like facial expressions in this, even though she wasn't talking in the scene. Like she had they just had like very good like conversation and like just like body language. It was just so good. Like they
Yeah.
were able to like just tell so much from the scene, which I loved, and I love seeing scenes of them. We need to get them more because I love
Yeah.
it.
I love this dynamic. Also,
Right.
I just gotta say, Jennifer Love Hewitt deserves all her flowers because the mark of a fabulous actor is taking their voice and having them still be able to fully communicate everything that you need to know in that scene.
Yeah, she did great.
Right, exactly.
Because honestly, the voice, like, we're doing a podcast. We all know how important voices are.
Oh yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
true. That's so
Yeah.
true. I guess I never really thought about that, but it is true. Like if one of us lost our voice, that would literally be like the worst thing ever.
Yep.
And especially
Like,
all of our jobs require us to be vocal and be able to
Right.
that's true.
communicate. Like if
Communi-
any of us lost our voices, it'd be so difficult.
yeah.
Especially when acting comes with like specific exaggerations, specific intonations, inflections that you need to be able to do vocally. Like having your voice requires so much acting talent that I think people don't appreciate. But when you take away the voice and that's taking away
Mm-hmm.
primary communication, then you have to focus on body language. And she did such a fabulous job. She really did. Give my girl her Oscar right now. I don't give a shit. Like
Yeah.
she did great.
No, she did amazing.
So moving on, Maddie takes G to the park, and she's watching her, and she answers a text from Athena, who is checking in on her, seeing if she's hanging out, or hanging in there. Sorry, I read that wrong. Seeing if she's hanging in there. And Maddie says that she took G to the park since she needs fresh air. Athena's last message of her telling Maddie to give her a hug for her. I love that. And then she loses sight of G while she's answering the text. And she has to look for her, and she's trying to use her voice, and you can like hear it steadily, like it's stronger. And finally it finally comes out, she yells G, and then she finds her. And like she was fine.
Right.
She had just gone off onto another slide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
which that's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
You see it all the time with parents. Like it's so scary because like yes, you try to keep your eye on your kids like 24/7, but like we're all human. Like sometimes something happens where you can't find them. I was like the close to mom kind of kid, but my like because I was always afraid of getting lost. But my brother was like the explorer. I would
yeah.
say where he was more the one. My mom was always like, I never had to worry about you, but your brother, my brother would be like, my brother was that kid that he would try to run away, especially when he was really little. Like when he was really little, like he was that leash kid, but only because my mom was just worried about losing him, and like I'm not even joking. He would like those railings they have at the mall. My brother would try to climb those, so like it was important that he was a leash kid. Like, and she definitely got a lot of like this is the 90s, so she definitely got a lot of the looks. Can you imagine now? People will probably think she's
Right.
aggressive.
Yeah. I do love, it makes so much sense that this is how Maddie got her voice back because
Mhm.
she's a rock star mom and she was worried about G, and G is part of the reason she even got through her whole situation when she was kidnapped. Like
Right.
it's just watching her turn up for G and like go through so much to be a good mom, a good person, like someone G can rely on. And we have seen that since she was a baby. Like Maddie left for her, in her own way and for herself. So that she could both protect G and also take care of herself to be a better mom. And we have steadily seen that. So it just makes so much sense. She got her voice back because her love and her worry for G was stronger than her own fear. What is happening next time she speaks?
Right.
What is going on at her job? And so
Yeah.
it was just perfect. Perfect. 10 out of 10. No notes.
Yeah.
Loved it. So then we go back to Eddie and we can see that he has texted Chris a lot. He has left Chris on red. Or no, Chris has left him on red. Sorry. Chris left him on red. And it's like, oof. And then he's texting him asking, hey, do you want to get dinner? No pressure. And then he gets a knock at the door and it's Chris. And we love asking Chris how he got here. And he's like, Uber.
I
And
think back
Chris,
to when Chris took Uber to Bucks. Like I was like,
I
oh.
know. Which
yeah,
that scene, I was like, he was way too young to be doing that because I
Yes,
know
at the
like
time he totally was.
like they literally did not fact check that because like Uber you can't take if you're like so you can have like your parents will have to have you like on their account under like Uber Kids and you can only be like 14
Mm-hmm.
14 and up to be on that, and I think your parent has to like request a ride or whatever. So like the fact that he was doing that a few seasons ago, that was they definitely didn't fact check that, but like I'll disregard. But I'm just like You know what? I'm just putting it out there.
I think they have developed more of an Uber team thing. I don't know. I keep getting like notifications from Uber about it. I'm like, that does not apply to me in any way, shape, or form. Shut up. But I
Right?
think they
Yeah.
have developed it more. Like he probably could order one himself now. But yeah, no, a few seasons ago, what was it, 4? Absolutely not. He would have been like 9 or 10. But it is funny. And so Chris brought the PS5, and Eddie asked if he wants set up here, and Chris says he wants him to return it. And he said that, he thinks he doesn't want it because of what Eddie did. And he says, well, he does want it, but Eddie needs to save his money if he's going to stick around. And PS5s are expensive, so fair enough.
Yeah, those are like what, minimum like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, you want me to? And Chris is like, yeah, you're my dad. And Eddie apologizes for lying about being a firefighter. Eddie's embarrassed it fell through and he wanted Chris to be proud of him. And Chris says he is. And they hug and say, I love you. It's very sweet. I would still love to see a scene where they talk about things a little bit more, but clearly they're making developments.
Right.
And I'm happy about it because it feels like we've been a little stagnant on it for a bit.
Yeah. And I love how
so
Eddie was like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was done.
Oh, sorry. I was like, I was just really happy. Like, even Eddie, like, can I ask if he could hug Chris, and just having Gavin and Ryan back filming it together is just awesome. And I'm sure we'll get some more in later episodes. Because I know, like, they're not going to just gloss over it because they made such a big deal about Chris leaving and why. So, but this was, I can definitely understand why Eddie was the way he was this episode, because he's like trying his hardest to get back on his son's good side, trying to have a relationship with him, trying to fit back into Chris's life. And then every little hiccup and bounce, like, he's like, oh my God, like, what do I do if he like rejects me again?
Yeah, and I think, and this is no fault of Ramon, but I feel like him pointing out that Chris had bragged about his dad being a firefighter, well, it was well intended and meant to cheer Eddie up. I feel like if maybe that hadn't happened, he might have felt like he was able to tell Chris, maybe, or he would have gone into his own head. But that was so fresh for him. So I can see why Eddie lied, even though he shouldn't have, but I can understand. And clearly Chris can too. And I think that is, especially still going off of, clearly they've got unresolved issues.
Yeah.
So I think with that still in mind, the fact that he was able to like look beyond that, be magnanimous about it, and like bridge the gap a bit, they're gonna be okay. Again, still got things to work out, but they've got to be okay. They're gonna be okay. And then the last scene of the episode is Maddie taking a call, and she is so back.
Yeah, she is.
Honestly, I love this episode. I loved that they had intent, like their focus was on Maddie and Eddie.
Yeah.
And the other characters were more supporting characters than main, and I was okay with it. As we finally got to see what Eddie was doing in Texas, we got to see Maddie dealing with her trauma, and being the awesome person that she is. And I think this is very well setting up the trajectory of the next bit, like rest of the season, even if we're maybe not sure on how it's gonna go necessarily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I really like this episode. I know some people wish that like they split some things up, but I think honestly it was like a good balance. I really liked it. Yeah, it was a really good, solid episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, we have some really great ones, and they're definitely doing really well with the writing. And I'm glad we got some Eddie in Texas and kind of finding out what he's trying to do. And I actually kind of like the Uber idea, just because it is kind of one of those, like, it doesn't take much to sign up, and then all of a sudden you can start Ubering. And he, like, like we said, he's got a mortgage, he's got, bills. He can't just like totally not work. Had he gone there and just rented an apartment, he could have done that, but he couldn't because he was already in a lease, and that you're not allowed to have multiple leases going at the same time.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's what, so I kind of had to choose, like, rent a place, because the only other option would have been like staying with his parents, and he did not want to do that. I'm like, I don't blame him.
I can't blame you. As like a 30-year-old, do you really want to be living with your parents if you don't have to? Like, I could understand if financially, like, you need to.
Also, I feel like he would maybe want to throw himself off the roof if he had to deal with them like much more than he already does. His relationship with them is not perfect.
Right. And not only that, I'm sure he would feel like he's invading Chris's space. And
Yeah,
Mm.
that
with the
too. It would have
relationship
been healthy.
kind of rocky right now, he probably wouldn't want to do that until he knew for sure that Chris was like what would welcome him, in. But yeah, no, I really like this episode. I think it was really good, and I'm looking forward to what they have coming down the pipeline. And we've got, I think I heard for sure that we're getting 18 episodes this season, so we've got quite a few more to go.
A lot can happen in 6 episodes.
So I'm excited to see where things are going.
I know.
Mhm.
Well, until yesterday. Just
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a whole other topic.
that's a whole other thing.
I'm just pretending I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
That's like
The
a thing to
freaking
unpack
leaks
later.
that are happening.
I
Because
know.
those
I'm
weren't
like,
official BTS, right? Those were leaks. Like people
For
taking
leaks of people on the sidewalk filming. Like there's even a
There-
guy doing a live stream.
yes, I saw that. There's a
Like,
guy doing
really?
live stream and didn't even know what 911. He's like, "Oh, what's the deal with this Oliver dude?" I'm
God.
like, "Dude, you're annoying." He's like, "I've been here all day," and I'm like, "Dude, nobody cares."
nobody gives a shit.
A promo now. Tina is telling Bobby that their attacker already stabbed one hostage with a carving knife. Just like a bus, whatever, they're all on the bus. And then somebody says he is refusing on letting anyone on or off. And then Hen's like, "Oh, I want to talk to him." And I must have been like the SWAT person, I'm not really sure. I was like basically
Give me rocker.
yeah, I literally
Crossover.
that would never happen, but we can
Oh God, I
totally
can dream. Okay,
I can dream, right? I know. Get a little rocker and
Little rocker.
Tommy
Send Buck
interaction.
into a crisis. Like what the fuck?
Oh, wait,
What did you text
Two
him,
of
Tommy?
them?
When did you join SWAT? And he's like, I didn't.
he has like a twin out there or something like
Yeah.
that. Not like an
Rocker's like,
actual twin, but like
right.
it like a look like
Doppelganger.
that's happened before. Yeah.
Fanfiction come to life. I would be
Right.
sat here for it. I would pay money for that.
Well, and it was funny because in earlier seasons of SWAT, they had some like police fire competitions, and Rocker was one of the competitors. I was like, oh, that would have been hilarious.
Oh, that's giving me some ideas. Anyways, let's
Back to the promo.
sorry guys. So then Hannah is gonna get on the bus, but Jim tells her not to, and then Hen tells the attacker guy, that he's gonna have to let him go because this guy is like not doing well, like he needs a hospital. And then the attacker, he's like, "Oh, well, I make the rules," and then Athena is like outside and she's like saying how she just became a hostage. Funny thing about this whole bus thing is the rookie just did an episode like this a couple weeks ago, so
Yeah.
everyone was commenting on this, be like, interesting.
Who copy who? I don't know. I mean, obviously, these were also these were written and filmed a while before the airing, so
Right.
I believe.
That's like, yeah, not to say that, no, I'm not saying that anybody's copying anybody, but it's just funny when things like that work out. It's kind of like when all these shows were doing like the hospital gets hacked or the whatever gets
Mhm.
hacked scenes, where I had seen that within the same time span on like several medical shows, and like it was just funny. It's a very funny coincidence. But
Well, this is going to be interesting.
and I don't think we've really gotten, well, minus like the call center, I don't think we've really gotten like anything like this. So it'll be definitely interesting.
Yeah. I would really like to see somebody try to take hostage the fire station. I don't know if that's been done.
I would love that. That happened at Chicago Fire like quite a few seasons ago, and honestly, it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I'd go for it. Just as long as the fire station remains standing.
Right? Yeah, nobody starts a fire or anything. Yeah.
No one 126 this shit, okay?
Literally. I love how we can just say that and everyone knows what we mean.
What are we talking about? Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check out our website at 91lsroundup.com. You guys can also follow the podcast on our socials at 91lsroundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. As always, be sure to join our Discord server. The link will be in the description of this podcast and also on our website.
You guys can follow me, Katie, at Full of Tarlos on TikTok, Instagram and Threads.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Rafa911 on Instagram and Threads.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Threads. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.